If you're watching from Eastern Europe tonight, chances are you're breathing some of the worst quality of air on the continent. That's according to a new report from the European Environment Agency. It calls pollution an invisible killer, responsible for 500,000 premature deaths each year. And it points to a distinct east-west divide when it comes to the air you breathe. The report comes as government representatives from around the world gather at the WHO in Geneva with the aim of reducing deaths caused by air pollution. Well, let's take a closer look at that report. It says air pollution causes more than 500,000 premature deaths in 41 European countries each year by causing or aggravating diseases such as heart disease, asthma, and lung cancer. Bulgaria, Poland, and Slovakia have some of the worst air quality, but the worst of all is Macedonia. All right, these numbers are staggering. You chose this as the story you're watching. You know, the EU is claiming to be in the forefront of the fight against climate change and the environment, but these numbers don't add up.
No, that's why we need to take them much more seriously. We need to end the area of the combustion engine, our cars, our trucks, and replace them by electricity cars and also public transportation systems and also, I think, what you showed, other ways of transportation.
I wouldn't recommend scooters.
Well, I think scooters could be an option. But, really, I think, and I think what's going on now is that we have alternatives to have a polluting car or polluting truck in the cities. So why don't we use them? So that's what we should aim policy to do. And in the European Parliament, I'm fighting for that as well.
Is this surprising to you, this fact that the air quality in Europe is really this bad?
No, it's not surprising to me. I mean, it's actually been a problem for quite some time. What's surprising to me is how long it's taken for people to wake up to the fact that their kids, their sons and daughters are breathing in tiny particles which go into their hearts and their lungs. And that actually makes me extremely angry. I mean, there's one thing I'd say about the report and your report. Mentioning Eastern Europe is fine, but it's actually the whole of Europe. London, the air pollution is disgusting. Brussels is also really bad. So this is happening to everyone, regardless of where they are in Europe. Now, there are some EU laws, and I don't often say this, but the EU has done some good laws, but they haven't enforced them. In fact, it's down to groups like Klein Earth, which is a very good NGO, who've actually taken governments like the British to court to actually enforce EU standards, which the EU has, frankly, been unable to do.
Right. Okay, let's first get insight from Geneva, because that's where the talks are happening. Let's cross live to Dr. Maria Nera, Health and Environment Director at the WHO, and she's joining us from Geneva. Good to have you with us there. The head of the WHO called air pollution as the new tobacco. Is it?
Well, this is an analogy. What we pretend to say is that we need to go back to the time when tobacco was a public health issue and it was not really a scale up and we were not having the measures. On air pollution, we need to scale up. We need to learn from these government policies. We need to learn from all the sectors now joining forces to do something as big as it was done for tobacco. The only difference is that we don't want to wait 40 years, as it was the case for tobacco. Here, the evidence is so huge, so big that there are no excuses. We need to scale up right now. This is toxic air that is killing us. And the price is paid by our lungs, by our hearts, by our brain, and putting even at risk our cognitive development. So I think we have so many reasons why we need to change this completely.
Are we at that point of critical mass? I mean, it took a while for people to get to that critical mass to recognize when it comes to tobacco, for example. But as James was saying, this has been a big problem already. But why now? Are we at that point where it's already critical mass?
Well, it depends how do you want to qualify it. For me, it's a massive public health emergency. 7 million premature deaths occurring every year. Yesterday, we launched the report on see how this is affecting children. 600,000 children dying every year. And more importantly, 93% of the worldwide children exposed to this toxic air that is polluting their future. So we need to definitely make sure that everybody in 5 years from now, when the legal cases will start to increase, nobody will be able to say, we didn't know. We knew it, we know it, we have plenty of evidence, we have plenty of interventions, plenty of solutions, and this is the positive part. We can tackle air pollution, at the same time tackle climate change, and at the same time produce plenty of benefits for our health and for our economy.
Yeah, Dr. Nera, very, very quickly, do you think politicians are listening?
I hope so, and if not, we will make sure that it will be the case. We are creating such a movement that this is no way to go back.
All right, thank you very much. We have there Dr. Maria Nera talking to us from Geneva. She's from the WHO. Thank you. All right, so are we at that point? Is it a tipping point? Is this the point where we absolutely have to change?
I think, this is a global problem, obviously, and as bad as things are here, I think Delhi is genuinely having a discussion about banning all private cars in the city later on this week because the pollution there is astronomically bad. I think things have kind of changed. We've seen spikes in support for green movements and green parties across Europe in the past. I think in the late 80s we had it again in the mid-noughties. But of course, stories like the 2008 crash happened and suddenly the environment slides down the scale of concerns for voters and for politicians because the economy trumps it. I think what started to happen, and we are starting to see support grow, not least of all in Germany and elsewhere for green parties, it is, first of all, actually campaigning organisations have been very good at putting environmental issues at the top of the agenda, whether it's plastics in oceans or whether it's climate change or pollution. But second of all, I think people are starting to really impact it, not least of all things like climate change. You look at the wildfires over the summer in Portugal and Sweden.
Indeed,
people are starting to notice.
On this point, I just want to bring in some graphics that we have, because over the past few weeks, we've seen a green surge in different elections within the EU. Now, in local elections in Belgium, for example, the Green Party won a record 30% of the vote, leaving them runners-up overall. And in Luxembourg, they won 15% and increased their tally of MPs by 50%. In Germany, the Greens surged to second place in two major state elections. In conservative Bavaria, they doubled their vote, winning 17.5%. And most recently, they took 19.8% of the vote in Hesse. Now, we're looking at this green surge. Is this really a look at a vote because people actually care more about the environment, or is it a protest vote against, the other issues? So which is it?
Well, I think it's a combination of both, actually. I think people care more about the environment today than they did previously because of this financial crisis, economic crisis. But I also think that it reflects the reaction against the politics as usual. I mean, they've seen politics as usual. People want change, and they want to vote on somebody new that maybe haven't governed recently or ever, and therefore they vote for these parties and in kind of a wish to see something change.
James.
I mean, the thing I'd sort of say is that if there is this surge in feeling, why aren't any politicians being brave to make proper, serious decisions like just tax all new non-electric cars like they do in Denmark? Until there's a politician who actually says, OK, that's what we're going to do, as happens in Denmark, then I don't think we're going to see real change.
And the bizarre thing is that despite, I think, growing public concern, and despite the fact that there is a bit of a green surge, I mean, you look around the world also, there are a lot of people being elected who are standing on the complete opposite, talking about reopening coal mines and talking about how the economy has to trump also green issues.
We were talking about earlier the East-West. I'll bring it up because this is what some are doing. They're just simply sending their dirty cars over to the east, and that is not a solution. I was just looking at 350,000, I think, of German cars that would have been banned are sent to Poland.
But Germany,
so does that make sense?
I mean, Germany has a track record on this. Germany, for example, OK, yes, they've stopped using nuclear power. How did they make up the electricity shortfall? By buying dirty coal from Poland. So, there's a hypocrisy to that. I mean, basically, if you're serious about fighting air pollution and you're serious about fighting climate change, people have to accept and get behind the idea you need massive intervention on an industrial scale, probably government, well, definitely government-led, to actually turn this around. You've got to think of it like Roosevelt's New Deal on super steroids.
So is there enough political will from what industry, governments, and
Well, I think the car industry in Europe has been very reluctant on changing their production model and combustion engines, diesel engines even.
Too busy gassing monkeys.
Exactly. The gas industry is there, still very dominating. I mean, now, Germany wants to build a Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline and so on. There are a lot of resistance against a total transition of our economy, but we need to change it. And I also think we need brave proposals like, for example, our Growth and Stability Pact that we have here in Europe. Let's change it for a more sustainability pact where we see that we measure our progress in whether it benefits the environment, climate, air, and so on for people.
All right, but what